Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. Today we're going to talk about one of the Jaguars, not the new one that's coming in, but the Jaguar GR1. During this event that's going on, the Sword of Justice event, I decided to spade a bunch of aircraft, and the Jaguar GR1 was on the list. We actually ended up spading it in about 4 or 5 hours, really didn't take long at all, and also got one of the marks of distinction done. The Jaguar GR1 is in a really weird place in the game, and that's just because of the BR bracket it's in. If it gets up-tiered, it can be quite a tough area to play. If it gets down-tiered, it's able to do a lot and annihilate pretty much anything that it comes up against. And it is down to a few little factors that you'll realise while spading it. The Jaguar GR1 does not get any stock ordnance, so what this basically means is, as a vehicle, in a stock configuration, you are limited to just the 30mm Aidens. Now, you do get a decent amount of rounds with the Aidens. 300 rounds is enough to be able to deal with a few targets, and overall, it isn't too bad to, have a bit of fun with, but it also means you need to get close to engagements, and at the same time, it means that you are susceptible to a lot of the things that the GR1 is not good against. So the start of the vehicle, like the stock experience, is terrible. Once you get the fuselage repair, once you get the AIM-9G, so basically once you spend, I think it's like 15,000 to 20,000 RP, you actually become a vehicle instead of one that gets bullied by everything around it. And then everything starts to change because AIM-9Gs give you the ability to actually start off an engagement at a longer range, so you don't have to get into the nitty-gritty with the Jaguar, at least to start with. Because the reason you don't want to be in the nitty-gritty is because you don't have countermeasures. And this is the big difference between this Jaguar and a lot of the other ones. This one doesn't get any countermeasures at all. So if you go guns in blazing, you're going to run into stuff like Su-25s. You're going to run into stuff like A-10s, MiG-21 SMTs, F-5Es, F-5Cs, and even other vehicles like the Yak-38 with R-60s, and you're just not going to have a great time, meaning that the Jaguar doesn't do well from that general position, even though it's super maneuverable, and once you actually get the G-suit and the engine upgrade and the wings repair, it can accelerate pretty well, and I had a lot of times where I was able to kind of dodge a lot of, or defensively fly against a lot of jets, and then flip it over and annihilate stuff. I feel like that's not the way to go because of the missiles that you have. So this vehicle is completely transformed by the time you spend 20,000 RP getting the AIM-9Gs, or 25,000, whatever it is. Once you get that modification, it feels a lot better. And the reason for this is because the AIM-9G is a really good missile. It's something that I noticed when playing a lot of the Harriers. The 9G at the BR of 9.7 means that you can engage enemies from a lot further distance than you usually can, because it has a very long burn time on it, meaning that it will follow the target for a pretty long time. And this means stuff like Su-25s, A-10s, or even a lot of 9.3s like MiG-19s or Lightnings, which are engaged in turn fights. You can just pop the 9G in and nobody can really do anything about it. You just kind of annihilate people as you go along. So with the two boomsticks, the GR1 has a really good platform to start off a fight with. You're able to target, 2 people with them, and then you can go guns blazing, and usually by the time, as long as you've timed it correctly, by the time you fired those missiles and started engaging, you can have a wonderful time. Because usually the A-10s or the Su-25s, the second wave of enemies, have come into the target area. They're now dogfighting, and now you can help out with your guns and annihilate stuff. So it's all just about timing with the 9Gs, and then afterwards the timing of the hit. If you get it slightly wrong, your team might be decimated. If you get it slightly wrong where you're too early, then, your missiles can get countermeasured, and also you can go in without support and you'll get missiled. So if you can get that timing right, which is something, at least for me, that I developed when using the Harrier, you can have a really good time. And even if you're in a full up tier, you know, a lot of the vehicles that people play, the F5Cs, the F5Es, stuff like the MiG-21, a lot of them aren't vehicles where you kind of like stand off and don't do anything. With stuff like the MiG-21 S&T or the MF, you can do that, but the R60s don't necessarily have the range to be able to do that anymore. So a lot of people go in closer and then you can kind of dive on them with the 9Gs. The F4Cs that are around the place, you know, they don't have countermeasures, and 9Gs are very good against them because they're a very, very large heat target. The only thing you got to worry about with vehicles like that and the F104 is the kind of distance that people are away from you. And once you figure that out, you'll have a great time with it. So even though this vehicle, in aerialistic, it has limited, you know, weaponry, and it doesn't have countermeasures, surprisingly for me, I did pretty good in it, and it felt quite nice. And the major thing I'd heard all the time with this thing was the fact that it doesn't have access to these kind of countermeasures, and it doesn't have access to these additional stuff, so it can be a bit of a pain, and I definitely see that. You know, if you're facing stuff like F5Es, if they're played properly, or even F5Cs, you know, both which should be higher BR, you're gonna have a tough time unless you're able to force them to overshoot and hit them with the guns, which, let's be honest, the Aidens are not always the vehicles or the Aidens are not always the guns which do the most damage that you want, right? Sometimes they'll just do a hit, or they'll do like a ghost crit and not really do anything. But a lot of the time you will do decent damage and annihilate stuff. So for me, it was one of those where I felt confident pretty much going into any matchup. And it took 39 battles to spade the thing. We had a 54% win rate, which for a vehicle that isn't American at this BR is very good. And then also we had 80 air kills to 23 deaths. So in a strike aircraft that is more designed to, you know, bomb targets and hit targets, we ended up going for with a 4-to-1 KD and also spading it like that. And that, to me, feels pretty good. Now, are there better vehicles at these BRs? Oh, definitely. Especially 10.3, 10.7, like there are vehicles that will just trounce you. But if you can play it in that standoff role with the 9Gs, then go in for the hammer, you can actually have a pretty good time with it. It also has a really good RWR, so you can kind of tell where people are, and especially if they have their radars going, this helps a lot for the vehicle, even if, it doesn't, hardly anyone uses, like semi-actives had these BRs, but at least it helps in that way. You also have CCIP for rockets and bombs, so, if you need those to kind of research through the vehicle, if you're not as confident, with the AIM-9Gs, you can actually get the rocket modification really early, and you can get the 76 of them, hit bases and stuff like that, and same with the bombs, right? Because you can carry 8 1,000-pounders if you want to. I wouldn't recommend it because it's not the fastest vehicle and you might not get to the bases first compared to a bunch of other ones. So I would actually say the air-to-air roll's the way to go once you have the 9Gs. But yeah, it was a really fun vehicle to spade. Surprisingly, I will say, but it's definitely unbalanced because when you face 8.7s, 9.0s in this thing, even 9.3s, you just clap them. There's nothing they can do. They can't outmaneuver you. They can't get away from you. They don't have countermeasures. You just kill them with 9Gs. The only vehicle that even stands a chance is the F104, and even then, you can just outmaneuver it. Even if it tries to zoom away, you hit it with the 9G and it dies. And then at 10.3, 10.7, there's a lot of vehicles that are much better than you, even though you can face them with, a decent setup. So this vehicle inherently is going to be unbalanced because of the vehicles around it, but as many people will tell you from the 9.0, 10.0 BR range for aircraft, there's a ton of vehicles like this. For me personally, I had a great time in this, and I feel like other people will too, once you've mastered the engagement distance for the M9G, and also don't go in too early with the vehicle. As always, I hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time. I'd like to thank Schnitzel Stroker, Brendan Quinn, Vilneus, Character Fuel, Carrion Crow, Nicholas Richardson, Gus Irenicus, Pyman, Wartinder, Teddy, Daniel Stanton, B. Young, Opium Prime, Masonocrat, Lafouche, Alan Hacker, Sem Arslan, Uncle Bean, and Derek R. for supporting the channel.